Hey, Jeet.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of This is Tech Talks. And today we have a really special guest, Ten, joining us, who works as an engineering manager. So, welcome to the show, Ten.
Thank you very much.
And we have our co host, Jay and Ajay, joining us. Hey, how are
Hey,
you guys?
Good, good. Thanks a lot,
yeah,
Santosh.
yeah, I'm also great.
Yeah, so today we are actually going to talk about engineering manager position. So, Tain recently moved into an engineering manager role, and then we were planning actually this from a long time. So, as soon as we went into the break, I actually took this opportunity to actually connect with Tan and see if he's available and he can actually join us. And here we are. So, we'll be talking about everything you need to know about engineering manager role, how you can actually move into this particular role, what are the roles and responsibility which you have to take. So let's start with introduction of Ten. So Ten, would you like to actually introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Tane. I'm a 20 plus year professional software developer. I'm originally from Scotland and I live in the Netherlands. And I've been here for about 5 years.
Uh-huh.
While I've been here, I've been working in several enterprise companies. Um, Before that, I've been working in creative agencies, worked for startups, done quite a lot of open source software. So I've been really doing a lot of software development.
Uh-huh.
And through that process, it kind of takes you on a path of going through the tech leadership side of things. Then, yeah, at some point you kind of step into the kind of engineering manager leadership side of it, which is it comes with a lot of responsibility, but it also builds upon all the knowledge that you've gained over your career.
Cool. Yeah. So
Nice.
and just to check with you, right? How did you start it, right? So your journey from being an individual contributor, you said you worked with several agencies and then you moved into engineering manager role. So would you like to actually give us a brief idea about how it started and then how you reached here?
Yeah, so I've always been a bit of a computer geek, I suppose. I've been programming from a very young age. And with that, I kind of dropped out of school, didn't go to university. I ended up going into a kind of career of doing a lot of web development, a little bit of programming. And then, I had a few kind of wilderness years where I went away and did some other work that wasn't related to computing. But then I kind of fell back into working with some agency work that came up. And from there, I started learning a lot about building websites, building PHP, and WordPress. Also working with Python, just kind of trying out lots of different languages. And then at some point, kind of stepping into working with databases, learning SQL. So really, it was a gradual process of kind of building up a lot of knowledge around I suppose, the philosophy of software development as well as the practical application of doing it. Within that, like I said, working with sometimes startups within agencies. Sometimes, somebody comes along with an idea, they need a website launched. So you kind of learn the process of going through all the steps of, uh, I suppose we have a much more formal language around it now, especially things like 4D processes. But back then, it was just really going to a customer, kind of gathering some requirements, kind of understanding what they wanted, going away, building it, and kind of just giving it to them, and then they could either manage it themselves or you have some kind of support contract. And then, yeah, from there, kind of fell into working with a couple of startups, trying out just new technologies. Tried Node, for example, Node.js very early on. About 11 years ago, I think. So can't remember exactly when it came out, but it's been a long time. Also working with NoSQL, and I think that's really kind of what the gist of what I'm saying is with the kind of individual contributor role. It's really going out and trying lots of different things. Also, I've blogged for many years, and more recently on my personal blog, I've done a lot of like TypeScript articles and released open source uh, software around like building forms or even just actually building like a pipeline. And within that, it's kind of like a knowledge sharing, which I think ties into also part of the engineering manager role, which we'll discuss later, which is you're not just managing people, you're also kind of teaching them the techniques and the all the kind of, like I say, the kind of philosophy of that software. If you read something like Kent Beck and extreme programming, or you do all these kind of principles that you learn through like object oriented or functional programming. They're sorry, I do have a bit of a dry throat today. I actually made sure I prepared water.
It's okay. Take your time.
Always happens when you keep talking. But yeah, there I suppose part of that is all that kind of philosophy and practical stuff you bring along is that's really what the individual contributor role is kind of all about, I think.
So what exactly does an engineering manager do? So like, maybe compare it to like a lead developer or a senior engineer or something like that. Like for everybody that may not know, what exactly is an engineering manager? I mean, like my company's, there's 16 of us in the company and there's like 6 of us are developers. I'm the CTO. So like, we don't really have like, engineering managers and lead developers and et cetera, et cetera.
I think there's a couple of phrases around. There's like time span of discretion, which is what you know of a project, for example. So generally, a junior developer might know like the 2 to 4 weeks of the next couple of sprints. They might be aware of what is coming in the quarter. But then really it's more the senior level people that will know, especially ones that deal with architecture or operations, that will know more of the kind of like a year, 2-year plan. And then I suppose this is where you kind of know more of the 5-year plan as the engineering manager. Also, it's where you kind of step in and where you have different responsibilities. At the moment, because it's a much smaller team that I'm managing just now, it's a little bit more direct. But eventually, you would probably see that you have a tech lead role within that, where that person's responsibility is to kind of be the steward of that team and make sure that the scrums are being run, that things are being delivered, and that they also help the team with the more day-to-day stuff. And the engineering manager has to kind of balance, I suppose, the concerns and the needs of the team with the business, because you kind of have to understand it's you can go in companies where it's all one way or all the other, and maybe you can make it work, but I think it's understanding where you need to balance budgets, balance resources, and also how to help the stakeholders understand why is there a problem with delivery, why things might take longer. It's sometimes a role to kind of smooth over some of the things within a team and kind of help the communication flow a little bit easier.
Sounds like I might be an engineering manager based on that description.
Possibly, yeah.
I just got a new title.
I mean, it has been compared, I think, in Camille Fournier's book, she calls it like the mini CTO.
Yeah,
almost.
That makes sense.
A CTO is more I suppose that kind of board level role, whereas engineering manager is kind of VP, director level more than that board level. So you're involved with the board, but you're really your responsibility is the team and the teams that you manage.
So as an engineering manager, do you or engineering managers in general still do engineering work, or are you just managing the people that are doing the engineering work? Like, do you sit down and whiteboard? Do you code?
I do for some things, yes, whiteboarding, definitely. I suppose it's one of these. It depends, and it really depends for whoever wants to go to an engineering manager role. Certainly, tied with the CTO, there can definitely be a hands-on CTO, doing code. But then there are CTOs who are much more hands-off in dealing with, technology purchases and strategic integrations and all these kind of things. They're working out that stuff. So I think engineering manager kind of sits in the same role, but maybe not as such a strategic level for some companies. And I never thought I'd get into management speak, but here we are talking about strategy. But but I think that is part of it. It's understanding how to translate strategy into technical processes, business processes. I'm a big fan of BPMN, which allows you to kind of manage and understand and map your business processes. So it hides the technical there from your customers or your clients, but it still allows you to build those integrations, build those services.
Cool. Thanks for the explanation.
I'm sure others would disagree and have their own explanations. That's just mine.
naturally. Yeah.
So I believe that most of the work or most of the things that people do, like their behavior depends a lot on it. So what behaviors do you think that engineer manager should have, or what are the routines or some kind of what behavior should they have,
So
like how
I
to
think this,
talk to the team, something like that.
yeah, I think you know there always might be some controversial ones in some companies, but I think one of the main things for me is empathy. I mean, you have to. I think, like I say, I think anyone can be an engineering manager, but I think maybe some of the best engineering managers are probably the ones that have kind of gone through the trenches, as it were. They've kind of experienced the projects that failed. They've experienced bad management. They've experienced teams falling apart, and you know, I think if you live through that experience, you know that at the core of everything is kind of empathy and communication. Technology is always secondary to everything. In you know, you can make a technology choice and realize it's the wrong thing and switch, but as long as your core ethos supports that ability to happen, you know, that people are allowed to fail and make a mistake and make a different choice, then that's really the kind of best engineering culture, I think. Um,
Yeah.
you know, it's a shame that we drive like the productivity towards metrics and OKRs, and I think sometimes that's good to have, but I think you have to balance it with the needs of like making sure that people are actually have the ability to do the job, you know, either through unblocking them or providing additional training or I think that's again an engineering manager's role, is to look at the landscape of the team and see where do we have maybe some gaps in knowledge that we can provide. You know, maybe there's a junior who's interested in learning about something and they can become a subject matter expert within the team. You know, that's the kind of thing that I think you can pick out and you know, help people along in their journey as well.
Yeah, because like at the end of the day, it's all just like we're all people. It's all just
Yeah.
relationships, right? The classic, you know, corporation type operation of the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, whatever. That doesn't work anymore, especially with remote work. People want to feel valued, right? They want to be helped along and like I don't want to say real because that's the wrong term, but good managers, whether they're engineering managers or sales managers or whatever, they're leaders. They're more than just engineers. They're also leaders, right? So you need those leadership qualities to be a good engineering manager, even though you might be dealing with other engineers or programmers. Still need leadership qualities because at the end of the day, we're all just people. It's all just relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah. As we say, people first.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I thought, well, going to the tech side, interestingly, I saw a very good way of it being broken down is we've kind of had some generations of development as well in software. So you had the rise of the big vendors. So, you know, they would go in and sell their mainframes and sell their big SaaS, not even SaaS back then, sorry, the big like SaaS projects into organizations. And then the cloud came along. Lots of people built on that. So that could be the last 20 years. And now what you're seeing is the companies who had the initial purchases, they now want to move to the cloud. So you can see that big thing where it's really data transformation, digital acceleration, where these companies have kind of been stuck in the mud. And in some sense, it's a really good opportunity to become an engineering manager in some of these bigger organizations, because you can actually really hear that they want the change to happen. They know it doesn't really work anymore, and you know, data gets lost. You know, departments get split up, and people leave, and that institutional knowledge just can walk out the door. Interestingly, before my current job, I did about 3 months of interviews looking for a new role, and you could really tell there's lots of companies, they've got maybe 5-10 year programmers. So you maybe the most senior programmer they've got is about 10 years, and they've never really had, like I said, those kind of really bad projects. And then when they actually get to a point where it's like, okay, we need to scale up the business now, we're doing quite successfully, they're kind of missing that engineering manager layer, that person to kind of guide them in the right direction. So I think, again, a lot of companies out there, they're really
This guy right here.
seeking, you know, if you're a 20-year plus developer, and you're sick of your job at the moment, look for engineering manager roles, look for product owner roles, even, maybe take a sidestep. You probably have the skills to do it. For me, so my current role, we were doing a knowledge graph. I've never built a knowledge graph before. And I got hired to do it, but that's because I also have a lot of other experience that comes with it, which is knowing how to do architecture, how to bring a team together to build the operation, and how to actually lean on the people who know what they're actually talking about. So that's kind of where the engineering manager really sits, I think, in some of these bigger organizations now, where they really need to do that data transformation.
Let's take some questions which we have in chat. So first, Vijay has this question: do you get to code?
I can if I want. There's nothing stopping me. I think, but it's I took a little break from coding as well. I quite enjoyed it. I've just been doing a lot more reading. Just going back and doing a little bit more upskilling in my math. Also, was doing a bit of gardening over the summer when the weather was nice. So
Nice.
not actually looking at a screen. So yeah, I've been doing a few. But yeah, in terms of actually doing code, I can't. There probably will be things like proof of concepts. Those kind of experimental phases where maybe there's an opportunity to dive in, but I probably won't be releasing production code.
Let's take another question from Vijay. So his question is, why did you move from IC to engineering manager? Is it because hitting a glass ceiling?
Again, it depends. In some companies, if there's a lot of individual contributors, a lot of seniors, then yeah, you're going to be sort of vying for a position where there's a lot of different people there already. So you maybe want to take that jump into another company. And in a sense, no, I would say I could have continued as an individual contributor. I could have went to be a contractor. There was lots of options for me to do that, but I think the opportunity presented itself, and it was the right role for me to take that. I've said this before, that the only reason I got this role is I really put my heart into it, and I sent them a 2-page letter with a kind of plan of action, which is what they asked for in the job spec. And to lo and behold, I was one of the few people who did that. They didn't do much research about the company at all, and I had this like fact sheet. Maybe that says more about me than the role itself. But I think that's it. Is if you really want a role, the only person who can create it is probably you. I mean, the role might be there, but if you want it, you have to put your heart and soul into it to get it, I think.
Mm-hmm. You'd definitely be surprised, or I don't know if you would be or not. I was surprised at how few people actually do research into the companies that they're applying to.
Yeah,
it's
amazing.
It's baffling.
Yeah, but that's the thing. If you also, I would say, never take a bad interview as bad. Take it as experience.
Exactly.
You know what to not do next time, or it might even guide you in another direction. You might be thinking you want to go down a route, and you have a couple of bad interviews, and you actually suddenly realize, well, that's actually saying I'm better at this than that. So maybe there's some jobs here. Yeah. So that's what, again, with me, I suppose, when I applied for a couple of senior dev roles, I applied for a couple of engineering manager roles, a couple of product owner roles. I did kind of put myself out there a little bit to see what was available, but I think it also helped me over that period kind of really focus on what it was I wanted to do.
Yeah. Well, all failures are learning experiences, right? Like, as long as you don't fail and then not learn from it.
I think that's the biggest. Yeah, and that's the biggest, possibly one of the biggest problems in a lot of software organizations is not having that ability to fail. And whether that comes from the business or whether that comes from just other bad practices, it's always an apocryphal story, but it's that kind of one of Edison didn't invent the light bulb the first time. He tried 199 times to fail. It's kind of the same with a lot of software development. You're never going to get it right first time. You're never going to get the performance 100%. There's always going to be something missing.
Great.
It's the nature of what we work with.
Exactly.
But if we mistakes and propose solutions rather than being blamed, maybe that would be better.
Yeah, totally.
So I think Vijay has one more question before we move ahead. So his question is: does becoming engineering manager from a coding background gives you an edge over technical engineering or over non-technical engineering manager?
I would say yes to this one. I would say having that experience of having written the code and knowing how bad code can be written, how good code can be written, it's good to know, I think. But I don't think you have to have 20 years of experience of writing code. I think it's, there's a certain amount of time I think you kind of have to bake it in. But after a while, once it becomes that kind of second nature, you can look at a bit of code and say, hang on, this smells a bit wrong. So yeah, I think the better experience is definitely having been in different teams. I know there's an argument. There was certainly it caused an uproar maybe a couple of months ago about people who jump jobs versus people who maybe stay 10 years at a company. But I think if you do that jumping around, it's not a negative thing. You're learning lots of experience. You're meeting lots of different people. You might pick up a few things along the way.
Yeah.
Then at some point you realize you've got all these skills and you can apply them to something new.
Agree. I mean, that is something which I never believed from day one. I mean, in 3 years, I actually switched 4 companies, so I never worked for even a year. So,
Mhm.
and I never actually uh, gave any problem in future. So everyone is okay, right?
And one of the best people I ever hired had been coding for about 2 years at that point.
Yep.
And they were great. They just got it. They just understood it. So
Yeah.
it wasn't about
I have a couple guys on my team. I've hired 1, 2, 3, 4 directly out of university or college. And a couple of them just went and built like this entire system for us, like pretty much just the 2 of them. It was unbelievable.
That's the thing.
There's
When you
so
give
many good
people
juniors.
when you give people the space, I've said this. I would rather hire a really inquisitive junior who's willing to learn than a senior who's not willing to budge and knows and comes in thinking they know exactly what the answer is. Because it's probably somewhere in the middle, but the junior is going to at least learn something along the way. The senior might not.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the biggest things that I found with juniors is you want to find a junior that wants to do it right.
Yes.
Not a junior that wants to do the job.
Yes.
Because if they want to do it right while they're doing the job, they might solve the problem, but think, I'm not happy with this, and then go figure out how to do it right and then do it right.
Yeah.
And that's not so far as over optimizing or pre-optimizing or over engineering. It's just like, when a solution is like, something feels wrong about this. I don't think I built this correctly. Yeah. So those are the kinds of people you want to find. You're like, I want to do this right. So even if I get the job done and I know it's not right, I need to go learn more or research more.
Yeah.
Right. Ability to fail, right? As we already discussed. I mean, you should be curious to fail and see if I can actually improve in future. Not right. I mean, I'm going to do everything correct in first, right? It never happens.
I've done a lot of work in the opens. If you look at my repositories on my GitHub, you can look at the commit history of all the like minor changes and the times I've committed something and forgot something in the code or misspelled something. It happens. We've all broke production. We've all deleted a database we shouldn't have. It's just it happens.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah, you know what? You'll feel like crap for a day, and then you'll get over it, and you've learned a mistake.
Yeah, and then you never drop it a production database ever again.
No, well, you might.
Well, I really hope you don't. I really hope you don't.
Great. So, so we are almost close to the end of the session. So, to ask another question, what will be your suggestions in case someone is actually trying to move from an individual contributor role to an engineering manager role? So, can you just give some idea?
I think definitely have some kind of presence, like a GitHub or something like that, with and contribute to open source. It's always a great way to kind of get it yourself out there. Also with doing vlogs and things like that. It's, if you learn something, share it. It is a great way for you to learn more as well, because somebody might come back with a solution that is better. Some might argue with your solution. Just ignore them and move on. There's always a better one. But yeah, I think that's a good one there for people who are more junior. I mean, if you're more senior, yeah, really just have a look at the experience that you've had and be confident that there's a role out there for you. And if you want to go for a company, make sure you do a little bit of research. Make sure you have some kind of facts and figures, and also a good thing to think about is if they have values. Does anything in your work align with those? And don't be afraid to send like a 2-page cover letter. That is okay if there's some detail in there. On the resume side, when I did my final resume, even I hadn't included my freelance work. It was still 7 pages long, so you cannot send that. Yeah, you really cannot send that. So kind of cut it down to your most recent like leadership roles or things where you can really kind of stand out there. And then use LinkedIn for the rest of it. You can throw all your other roles and jobs in there. But the thing is that they want to see that on there. Also, be wary of the automated return email that you might get back a week later. If you really want the job, push for it. If they say no, I actually there's a company I worked for. They called Free Agent. The first time they said no, I went back to them. They said okay, and then I worked with them for 2 years. So you can do it, but don't be too. It's not about being pushy. It's about being showing your enthusiasm for the role, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, just to ask another probably last question. So, I mean, there are a lot of developers, right, who are really scared to actually even speak. And in case someone who is like very really introvert and he wants to move into engineering manager role, so what will be your suggestions to them?
I suppose I've always thought of myself as an introvert. I think it's more about you. I think if you want to be an engineering manager, it's really about understanding yourself and understanding that it's probably more about your energy level. If you can do it, you can be in front of people, you can lead, but be aware that can be exhausting. Like, you can. I've had days where it's just meeting after meeting after meeting, and you're standing here all day looking at the camera, and then you get to like 4:30 in the afternoon, you're like, wow, that was a long day. Because you've been having to talk and change context. So I think it's just being aware of that and having somewhere to go to kind of relax a little bit and kind of, I've actually started doing meditation recently, and it's actually been great. It really, you just kind of let the worries go away. Yeah.
What do you use to do meditation, Tane?
Just, I suppose, a bit of music and just, I've got a nice space upstairs, just put some relaxing music on and just sit. I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing, but by the end of it, I feel much more relaxed. You just give it half an hour. But I think it's just about letting the stress of the day go. It's not about doing anything. It's just about sitting there, and it's like, half an hour later, it's like putting something in the oven. Bing, you're okay.
Cool.
So if stress is relieved, you are doing something right?
Yeah, I think breathing exercises are great as well. If you just if somebody's being slightly annoying, just take a deep breath and relax. That's it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Tane.
That's one thing to say is, again, engineering managers is understanding how to communicate with people. And that, I think, is the point, is that it's not about being angry with people. It's not about being upset with people. That doesn't work. You have to learn to communicate with different types of people. And I think that's just it. It's learning that the right way is probably one of the best successes to being an engineering manager, being able to manage different stakeholders, customers, and your team.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Ten, for joining us, and Jay and Ajit.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
So that's it for today, everyone. So we are going to meet again next week, and next week we are going to talk about how you can actually grow your newsletter. So if you're interested, you can join. Vidya is joining us. She is running a newsletter, and she's pretty. Her newsletter is actually pretty famous, I would say, and you will get to learn from us. So join us to learn more. Thank you. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.